Hi, brothers and sisters. I'm going to answer a question that my brother Jonathan posed to me the other day. He essentially allegedly said and I'm surmising here, that Catholics at one point were good Christians and just deviated. And that basically Christians are the correct faith, so to speak. The first thing I want to point out is that Christ means Messiah. That's not my opinion. That is Greek. So when you understand that, you're going to understand. I'm just trying to give you the perspective by which you can interpret history, because what happened is that history is written by the victors, and since history is written by the victors, and since Catholicism had such an incredible amount of control, especially in terms of what manuscripts we have. I mean, even our Bibles are derived now from a manuscript called, one of them is the Codex Vaticanus, which, as you can see, has the Vatican in the name, and I can demonstrate that. So the Codex Vaticanus, this is one of the manuscripts that we translated from, and some of the Protestant translators translated from. And I'm just trying to help you understand that they've skewed terms and words and meanings of words. But that's okay, because you don't need to be a literary expert or a historian to understand what happened. I'm going to prove this to you just Googling things, okay? The first thing I want you to Google or look into, and I'm teaching you how to learn for yourself. I'm not going to, don't take this and go around posting, oh, look what Sebi said. I'm simply posting this so you understand how to research this matter, because when you understand the process, then you're going to understand how to digest the information. So the first thing I want to look into is early Christians, because what Jonathan said is technically correct in a way. Obviously, and I'm going to prove it to you at the end of the video, that they weren't actually Christians, because the term Christian originated in 321 AD. And I'm proving this with information that I don't even have readily available. I'm just using Google. So, but anyways, so let's just look at early Christians, right? Early Christianity. Okay, Wikipedia, let's go with that, right? There's tons of sources I can use, but I'm familiar with Wikipedia, so we're going to go with Wikipedia. Early Christianity is a period of Christianity preceding the First Council of Nicaea in 325. The Council of Nicaea was something that came after the establishment of the Roman Catholic Constantine Church, when he merged religion and government together. So that's arguably when some Protestants say, well, that's when they started deviating. I agree. Okay, so let's continue reading. The first Christians, as described in the first chapters of the Acts of the Apostles, were all Jewish, either by birth or conversion, which the biblical term proselyte is used, and referred to by historians as Jewish Christians. Okay, remember this. Remember this right here. We're going to go back to this link. I think I can prove my point already. But let's get some more information here. The early gospel message was spread orally, probably in Aramaic, true, but also immediately also in Greek, sure. The New Testament book of Acts and Epistle to Galatians record was the first Christian community that was centered in Jerusalem. Its leaders were Peter, James, John, Paul of Tarsus, and his conversion to Christianity claimed the title of apostle to the Gentiles. Paul's influence on Christian thinking is said to be more significant than any other New Testament authors. There's a reason for that, because Peter warned that those that don't understand the Torah twist Paul's words for their own methods of lawlessness. Check it out. It's in 2 Peter. By the end of the first century, Christianity began to recognize internally and externally as a separate religion from Judaism. True, which itself was refined and developed further in the centuries after the destruction of the Second Jerusalem Temple. Right. Okay, let's skip up ahead. Okay, right here, this is interesting. This is what the Christians claim. Paul's letters, especially Romans, establish a theology based on Christ rather than the Mosaic Law. Okay, Mosaic Law being added in there and all that. Great stuff, as you will soon find out. The earliest followers of Jesus compose an apocalyptic Second Temple Jewish sect. Okay, also interesting. Let me open that up, and let me open up Jewish Christians. We'll check them out together. The first part of the period during the lifetimes of the 12 apostles is called the Apostolic Age, according to who? The Catholic Church. The Great Commission attributed resurrecting Jesus. Apostles said to rose from Jerusalem. The relationship of Paul and Tarsus and Judaism is still disputed. The relationship of Paul and Tarsus and Judaism is disputed. That's interesting. Early Christians suffered sporadic persecution as a result of local pagan populations putting pressure on imperial authorities to take actions against the Christians in their midst, who were thought to bring misfortune by refusal to honor the gods. Remember, it says early Christians. We're going to see what that means later. Persecution was on the rise in Asia Minor towards the 1st century. In 111 AD, the Emperor Trajan issued regulations about the conduct of trials of Christians under the Roman governing of the area. The first action taken against Christians by the order of an emperor occurred half a century later under Nero. Okay, also interesting, because Nero, remember they said that they were throwing Christians to the lions. That's the claim, right? And it was Nero that did it, right? No one's disputing that. 54 to 68 AD. Now, mind you, Constantine didn't establish his church until 321 AD, right? So here Nero is persecuting who? Well, we just read it. Early Christians were the ones suffering sporadic persecution. Let's go understand what an early Christian is. Okay, so I just opened this up and it opens up the Jewish Christian tab. Okay. Jewish Christians, also Hebrew Christians or Judo-Christians, were original members of a Jewish movement that later became Christianity. In the earliest stage, the community was made up of all those Jews who accepted Jesus as a venerable person or even the Messiah. As Christianity grew and evolved, Jewish Christians became only one strand of the early Christian community, characterized by combining the confession of Jesus as the Messiah with continued adherence to Jewish practices such as Sabbath observance, the observance of the Jewish calendar, observance of Jewish laws and customs, circumcision, and synagogue attendance by direct genetic relationship to the early Jewish Christians. The term Jewish Christian appeared in historical texts contrasting the Christians of Jewish origin with Gentile Christians, both in the discussion of the New Testament assembly, church, and the 2nd and following centuries. It was also a term used for Jews who converted to Christianity but kept their Jewish heritage and traditions. They didn't create... So understand what you just read here. Because the early Christians were known as Jewish Christians, and the only reason they were called Jewish Christians is because why? Because they thought that the feasts were only for the Jews. That's what they said. They said that the Jewish, they're called Jewish feasts. Well, I can show you right now, brothers, right now. Leviticus 23. I think was it 40? So Moses announced to the Israelites the appointed festivals of Yahweh. Yahweh, not the Jews, to the Israelites. And some of you Christians out there understand that you are Israelites. You are. So start keeping the ordinances. All right, I'm getting a little heated here. Sorry. Let's continue. It's been argued that few Jews joined the Christian movement. They usurped it. They usurped it. They took what was known as the sect of the way. If you want to understand what Paul believed, look up Acts 24:14. However, I admit that I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they call a sect. What did we read earlier? Let me find it. Here it is. The earliest followers of Jesus composed an apocalyptic Second Temple Jewish sect. Okay? All right, let me open this up. I wonder if the way is in here. No, it isn't. Wow, that makes me look bad. No, it isn't in here. Okay, well, let me see if it's in here. Oh, Oh, what do we find here, guys? The Jewish origin of Christianity. According to the church tradition, the Roman centurion Cornelius is considered the first Gentile convert, as recorded in Acts 10, perhaps a God-fearer or a proselyte of the gate, though the exact meaning of these terms is disputed. The major division prior to that time between Hellenistic and non-Hellenistic Jews or Canaanite Greek and Aramaic speakers, the conversion and acceptance of Gentile Cornelius can be described in terms of the Judaic teaching, which describes strangers becoming part of the community. Acts does not use the term Jewish Christians. Rather, those led by James the Just, Simon Peter, John the Apostle, the pillars of the church, were called followers of the way. So if you understand what you just read, they were called Jewish Christians because they kept Sabbath observance. They kept the Jewish calendar, but it's not the Jewish calendar. It's the Israelite. It's the calendar of Yahweh. It's not Jewish laws and customs. It's Yahweh's laws and customs. Circumcision and synagogue. The only reason they went to the synagogue, it was the only place they could hear the Torah. The Jewish laws and customs are not what was binding, not what was bringing them down. It was the Talmud. Remember what Jesus said. Jesus said to the Jews, to those of the Jewish faith, not the Jewish Christians, not the Israelites, that they nullify the law. Here it is. Thus you nullify the word of Yahweh by your tradition that you have handled down, and you do many things like that. Well, who was he talking to in Mark 7? Let's look it up. Mark 7. In Mark 7, verse 1, the Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law had come to Jerusalem and gathered around Jesus. They were Jews, not Israelites. They were Jews of the religion of Judaism. So there you have it, guys. The early Christians, the ones that were getting persecuted, the ones that were being thrown to the lions by Nero, they were the ones that were called early Christians. And they weren't called early Christians. That's a lie. They were followers of the sect known as the Way. And then those that were of the Way, they were Torah-Observant Believers in the Messiah. They had no religious label. Okay? So that's where the nonsense started, when they deviated you and unfortunately led a lot of us into religion instead of liberty, which is what the Torah is about. Individual liberty, standing alone, pursuing a relationship with your Creator. Thank you and shalom. Have a wonderful day. I'll take your questions.